Welcome back everyone to Self-Serving Skillet. I have a different kind of video for you today. I'm at my girlfriend's house trying to help her pack up for a move. I brought some ingredients with me, going to attempt to test out a sandwich bread recipe. I'm not going to have time to go home and actually shoot that then, so I'm just going to shoot the tester and hopefully we can all learn something. Now this is the stuff no one talks about. You got to keep good notes and be able to be ambidextrous between both languages in the kitchen, because I prefer metric. I've been using metric for a while now, but I don't have a scale right here. So I'm going to be using the standard side of my recipe, or at least the volumetric side of my recipe. I want about 400 milliliters of warm water. Comes to just shy of 2 cups, maybe 1 2/3. And I'm going to take this temperature here, and you see above 130 there, we're already getting too hot to bloom yeast. So we're going to stir in some sugar so the yeast has something to feed on, let it cool down a little bit. I'm using half a tablespoon of sugar, which is 1.5 teaspoons. While I'm waiting for that water to cool down, I can preheat my oven. Water's cool enough now to add our yeast. Just gonna go with a whole tablespoon of yeast. I think that in a packet there's half a tablespoon. I could be wrong about that, but this much yeast plus some cost me like $5. So if you do a lot of baking, it's really worth it. So this right here is really why I like to use a scale. Doesn't matter if you use metric or imperial units. I like to use a scale for this purpose, because if you don't weigh your flour, this is what you have to do to get a good consistent recipe. Spoon it in or sift it in, and then we level it. So since I'm trying to do this with one hand, I'm going to do the rest off camera. I think it's important to note that I'm using bread flour for this. Bread flour has more protein in it than all-purpose flour. You can definitely use all-purpose flour for this. It's going to be fine. Bread flour, I think, just gives you a nicer loaf of bread. Unbleached flour is also very important to me. My suggestion to anyone that wants it is to find a brand that you like and stick with that brand. Different mills at different companies are going to be different. So a good way to achieve consistency across anything that comes out of your kitchen is to be consistent with your product consumption. You can go for 10 grams of salt, which is sort of a scant 2 teaspoons. And I'm just going to mix my dry ingredients together. And that yeast is looking pretty good. I'm going to let it go for a little bit longer. So how I came up with this is the recipe I used for my buns, and I wanted something similar but for white bread. So if you're interested in coming up with your own recipes, look up something called the baker's percentage, and it will tell you what percentage of flour to water to use, plus salt and fat, for your different breads, for your brioche or your French bread or your white bread, which is what I wanted to do here. So what that means is that your flour is 100%. Whatever weight of flour you use, that is 100%. And if I have, for example, here, I wanted 55% hydration, I take 55% of my flour and I put that in water. Okay, the entire thing does not need to equal 100. We have 100%, we have 55%. Then I don't remember what the percentage of fat that they wanted me to use was, but it came out to 119 grams. I'm just going to round to 120, and since I don't have a scale, what I'm going to do, and you can do this too, and this is what I do all the time, is I'm going to go serving size is a tablespoon. So now I have a volumetric measurement, and serving size is going to get me 14 grams. All right, there are no other macros on here because oil is all fat. So quick math says that a times 8 is somewhere around 120. That's 112. So that is 112 in a half cup. So we're going to use a half cup plus a splash. And we want a nice neutral oil, something that is not going to get in the way of the flavor of our bread. If you like olive oil, do olive oil. If you don't like any flavor from the oil, use a vegetable oil or canola oil. So I'm just going to go a little bit past half. All right, I have my yeast, I have my fat, I have my salt, and I have my flour. I'm going to go in now so that this is nicely bloomed, and I have proof that my yeast is in fact active. And I use this all the time. I use this yeast all the time, so I know it's good, but I just like to get in the habit of making sure down. We're going to lock, and we're just going to let this come together. When it's all stuck together, not sticking to the sides anymore, that's when I like to pull it. Alright, so especially with doughs that are not high hydration doughs, I like to use oil instead of flour for kneading. Now, if this was a dough that I wasn't going to serve, I didn't need ready for a day, 3 days, a week, this would be a higher hydration dough. And I wouldn't be kneading it as much. Because gluten formation is a triangle. You have kneading, you have time, and you have hydration. So if you take a higher hydration dough, get it just to form, and then let it cold ferment in the refrigerator for a couple days, well, you barely need to knead that sucker. We're going to take a little break. If it is getting a little difficult, taking a break can actually benefit the dough, because what we're doing by adding time is allowing that flour to hydrate. So we're going to catch our breath and we're going to go right back in. There's nothing left in this kitchen, so I'm going to oil up the bowl from the stand mixer. And that's going to proof right in there. I want to put this in a warm place. I've got a pot of water boiling over here for lunch, and then I also have my oven going over here. And I did both of those things because it's a little chilly in here and the heat's not on, so preheated the oven early, and I'm gonna make lunch with this guy. So see if you can multi-purpose some of those things when you're going into the kitchen. Maybe all of my energy isn't going into this one thing, and all of the things that I'm doing can aid each other. All right, let's check this out. That divot in the middle is from when I punched it down earlier. It wasn't rising the way I wanted, so I stuck it in a pot with some water around 120 degrees. Make sure it's not any hotter than 130 if you're going to do that, so I could just jump start it there. But it should be fine now. Yeah, deflating nicely, and we'll get it over here. I already have this bread pan all oiled up. Bring my dough out, and especially since it's all nice and warm, it's very pliable right now. So I'm just gonna make sure that it's sort of in a uniform shape. And once it's in that ball, I'm going to do the same motion with my hands, alright? But then I'm going to get it in sort of a loaf shape. Pick that up, get it into my pan. Same warm space. We're just going to cover it with another pan. 35 minutes later, yeah, that's beautiful. That is ready for a 400-degree oven. And this is why we tested out. It definitely wasn't elastic enough. Bread needs to cool completely by itself or else it gets gummy. I'm not sure how that's going to affect it. And then we'll cut into it and see. It's been a little bit. It's pretty cool now. This can happen for a couple reasons. Basically, the top will cook and set before everything's done rising. So the issue could be that I didn't proof it for long enough, or that the dough was too dry, or I could put a bowl of boiled water in the oven to make a steam oven, and also I could score the top, and that will give it sort of a controlled cracking. So I think we're ready. Let's get this out of the pan. First, I'm gonna, oh, and it came off right away. That's nice. If it doesn't come out right away, you can run a dinner knife along the inside. Ideally, I like a serrated knife. I don't have a serrated knife right here. All you need is a sharp knife, and you just need to get it going. And quite done. But this is why we test. And the bread tastes good. So the important thing is that it tastes good. And it does. I think that the recipe itself is really good. My proportions are right on. I just need to get a better bake time, score my bread, and probably put some steam in my oven. This was not a failure, all right? Because because I am one step closer to doing what I set out to do, which was to create a really good sandwich bread. And now that I've done this, I'm still one step closer. Day after, and this dough is behaving a lot more nicely. I did two things. One is I added a little less flour. Before I had 6 cups, this time I added 5.5 and then sort of spooned in flour to the stand mixer until it came together. And the second thing I did is that I only heated my yeast water to 120 degrees or 48 Celsius. It's really important to write this stuff down. 130 is stuck in my brain because that's the temperature I like my coffee. This is why I write things like 1 table or 1 tea, because they both start with T, and that messes me up. So take good notes, even when you think you don't need to. It is several hours later. Let's take a look at this. These 2 marks right here are because I got way too close to the top of the oven, so in the middle of baking I actually had to take a baking sheet out and drop it down and just hope for the best. So not the most aesthetically pleasing loaf of bread, but I'm way more concerned with how it tastes and if I got it done in the middle or not. Yesterday I baked that loaf for about 25 minutes, and today this baked for about 35. Okay, looks more done to me. Let's cut into this. And I'm not going for perfection, but I am going for improvement. And that is definitely improvement. That feels nice and springy and spongy. Let's cut off a slice here. See how it stands up. Sandwich bread take 2. I think that we've learned quite a bit. Oh, that's really nice and soft too. So what did I do different this time as far as the baking? I kept the dough warm the entire time. It has just a hair less flour in it. It's better to start a little below what you think you need and to come up. I got my yeast temperature right. I would rather put an egg wash or a milk wash or something else on top of that. I didn't have a basting brush. In fact, most of my girlfriend's kitchen tools are put away. So I'm already at a disadvantage. I'm using an unfamiliar oven. I'm using not a scale, and I don't have that many kitchen tools at my disposal, but I was able to test and get something that I really, really like. Look at that. That stands up on its own, and it's very fluffy. I could have scored it along the top to make like a place where it can expand, because you can probably see that it expanded a little bit too much right there. It's not a huge deal. It's definitely not as bad as last time. But I call this a win. I think I'm about 90% there. It's just aesthetics from this point. So now I get to go home to make myself a sandwich.